Dude, can we go like one calendar year without any bad news for Halo? On this installment of Halo Hurts My Very Soul, we have this report from Rebs Gaming, where he reviews evidence of Halo Studios using generative AI in game development for new Halo projects, including what a developer who worked with studios told and showed me, and share my discussion with former Halo Studio art director Glenn Israel about how AI is used in game development. Hello, everybody. It's your boy Jmulls, and we, unfortunately, have a lot to talk about.
Say what?
Gaming's biggest struggle right now is that it's being led by a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. And the worst bit, they think they know what they're doing, but they don't actually know what they're doing. So, welcome to today's installment where we can't go 6 months without something bad happening about Halo. In today's episode, we have Rebs Gaming reporting Halo Studios just hired Angela Hessian as their new chief of staff, former Microsoft COO, and founded an AI enablement firm, yay. Also, I previously reported that Halo Studios is using generative AI in game development. To prove this, I've gathered all of the evidence, including my conversation with and screenshots from a developer. I explain everything in my new video, and this is the entire video. You know, you just want to have hope for the future of this franchise, and then every time they give you a reason to give up. So let's talk about the future of Halo, I guess the role of generative AI, and where Halo goes from here. So why is it that people don't like generative AI being talked about for game development? Well, there's a bunch of reasons, especially if you ask a bunch of different people. But a couple of the key points of criticism that I see is that if you remove people from the equation, from the role of developing and writing the game, and you replace their role with generative AI and just AI overall, you are removing that human element. You're removing the soul from the equation. Think back onto that one episode of SpongeBob where it was SpongeBob versus Neptune in a Krabby Patty cook-off. Or was it King Train? I always mix those two up. Regardless, the entire point of the episode was that Neptune was able to shovel out a whole bunch of Krabby Patties, but they were disgusting. They were middling. There was no soul in them. And SpongeBob put out one Krabby Patty, but it was made with love and care and was overall delicious. Quality over quantity. And while that isn't a one-for-one metaphor with what's going on with game development right now, I'd argue, I think the soul of the argument is relevant here. And that the fear is that you remove a lot of core design that was so intentional and so foundational for the success of Halo during the Bungie era. If you remove those elements and replace them with AI, would the games even feel new? Would they feel as tightly well-designed as those Bungie games were? If, for instance, you use generative AI to construct levels or to create textures, well, now we're talking about the artistic styling of a video game, and for Halo, that is so important to the success and the visual identity of the games. And if that is no longer there and it doesn't land like it used to for Halo, then the games can feel alien and just different to what was already beloved. This is one of the issues 343 Industries ran into when they kept deciding to change everything just for the sake of changing things. Was everything across the board necessarily ugly? I wouldn't argue that, no, but if you ask me, I think if you ask most people what they prefer, the 343 era of visual identity for Halo or the Bungie era, I think a lot of people would go with the Bungie era, and even then, the Bungie games had so much visual variety across all the different games, but they were purposeful, and there was clear intent with each of the games. And I think even when we talk about something like the upcoming Halo campaign Evolved, the remake, the Combat Evolved, one of the biggest sources of criticism in that game is not just the fact that adding sprint or aim down sights for a bunch of weapons or stuff like that. It's just how things look, how the world feels, particularly the Forerunner architecture, the assets that are used. And when it comes to a series like Halo, the art, the vision, the aesthetic is so dang important, not only to the story, but to the tone, the feel, the overall experience of the game. And if this is going to be an element that is continually compromised going forward because Microsoft wants to push generative AI, well, a lot of people will look at that and think nothing's really fundamentally changing with Halo. But I don't want this just to be another video where it's just like AI is bad. There's like millions of those on the internet. What's like the best case scenario? And I think the best case scenario is something that Rebs talked about in his video when he was interviewing various people. That is the idea that AI should be the tool in a toolbox for developers, for writers, for the artists behind the game that they can utilize to better express their vision or their idea into the game. I can only imagine, I'm not a game developer, but I can imagine there's probably a bunch of very repetitious tasks in the back end that no one wants to do that just take up time and mental energy that could be better allocated anywhere else. And like maybe AI could be inserted into the equation to solve those issues, to expedite those elements, and to keep the creatives focused on what they should be, well, creating. And I think if you're able to leverage and utilize AI in that way, it could be a very beneficial tool, not only for Halo, but for game design overall. But where I become pessimistic is that at the end of the road here, it's Microsoft. They are one of the biggest voices. They are one of the heads on the Hydra for AI and the push for AI right now, because they're a massive tech company. They're one of the biggest. And all these companies smell blood in the water, or maybe be more apt to say they smell money in the water. They don't want to pay people. No one wants to. Let's be fair here. They don't want to pay maternity leave. They don't want to pay sick leave, PTO. They don't want to have to handle like employee complaints. If they could just snap their fingers and tomorrow everyone was just replaced by a machine that did the same task and brought them in the same amount of money, if not even more money, from what they could save from not like having to pay for people, they would do it, right? Like, let's not get that twisted. The goal of these companies, and this shouldn't be a surprise, it isn't a surprise because deep down we all know it to be true. The goal isn't to produce art, it isn't to produce a great video game, it's to produce a game that sells, or a game that generates revenue with microtransactions, battle passes, whatever. That's the ultimate goal, duh. And Halo is a legendary IP. It's not a surprise to me that we get a report like this from Rebs, that Microsoft wants to leverage generative AI. It's the new buzzword, just like NFTs were a few years ago. We're on the verge of giant technological leaps that will foundationally change the human experience. And I know that sounds outlandish and it sounds overly grandiose, but it's just the truth. And these companies want to be the first one in the door so they can make the most money using this. They can carve out the lion's share of the market share when we eventually come out the other end of this. They can be the ones in control. So they already have the infrastructure in place. They already have the, I would say manpower, but I guess they kind of want the opposite. That's their ultimate goal. Now, why did I lead this section off by saying that gaming is largely in control of people that don't know what they're doing, or people that think they know what they're doing, but they actually don't know what they're doing? It's because if you want the game to make you money, the game itself has to be good first. You aren't going to sell cosmetics if people don't like the game they're playing and they don't like the characters those cosmetics are for. Or if they don't like how the game actually feels, they're not going to care about actually decorating their guns out or weapons or whatever. The game itself has to be good. And I don't think we're at the stage with generative AI where if you overly rely yourselves on these technologies, the game itself is going to be particularly phenomenal. Notice how I said overly rely, because I also don't think that the mass market is going to necessarily care one way or the other if a game had generative AI in it or not. They're going to care about if the end product is good, and therein lies the rub. Because we've always had soulless slot be shoveled out from these giant AAA studios. That's always been the case, and it's always going to continue to be the case. Where I think the real stars of tomorrow are going to shine are the people that are able to leverage AI, like we talked about before, like Rebs talked about in the video. The ones that are going to shine the brightest are going to be the ones that understand AI should be the tool in the toolbox. It shouldn't be replacing artists. It shouldn't be replacing writers. It shouldn't be replacing map designers, weapon designers, etc., etc., etc. It shouldn't be replacing them. It should be a tool to allow them to do their job better. But at the end of it all, you still need good management. And if you don't have good management that can't pick the right talent for the right role, then it's all going to fumble and crumble no matter what, whether you use AI or if you don't use AI. If your management sucks, the project is almost certainly, not always, but almost certainly doomed. I think one of the biggest issues a lot of people have with the generative AI when it comes to a lot of these big games right now is not even necessarily the fact that it's using generative AI. It's just this feeling we all have deep in our hearts where it just feels like these companies are continuing to trend chase. And for Halo, this has been one of its biggest issues for so long at this point. It's for some reason actively ignored the roots of the franchise and what made it successful and popular, believing it needs to modernize itself and to chase the popular trends other more successful games nowadays have normalized. And all these big tech companies going after AI and trying to become AI this and AI that. It feels like these companies just trying to chase a trend so they can tell their shareholders, hey, guess what, guys? that popular buzzword you hear everywhere. Oh yeah, it's totally the tech of tomorrow. It's gonna make us a bunch of money. Don't worry. We're using it everywhere in our games and in our development. Heck, we probably have even AI for the toilets here just to tell you how good of a bowel movement you had. We use it everywhere. I think one of the biggest sins is just like what I was just talking about. It's not even the fact that they're using AI. That has its own issues, don't get me wrong. Those arguments are everywhere. But it just feels like nothing's learned. It just feels like they're trying to trend chase all over again. Like you're watching the dog chase its tail time and time again, hoping one day it maybe learns that it's not gonna catch it, but it just keeps going in that freaking little hopeless circle no matter what. The tail may change, but the action remains the same. Because at the end of the day, we all know what's going to happen here. It's Microsoft. They can't help themselves. It's some primal urge they have deep within their very being. We all know they're going to try to shove this into every element they possibly can with no restraint, with no sense of measure. They're going to do it way too early before the technology is developed to a point where it's actually capable of successfully fulfilling these roles, just because they want to be able to say they put it there, because they salivate at the very notion they're gonna be able to fire all these people and no longer have to pay or mind any of these people so they can automate all these processes. And it's going to happen more and more and more as the years roll on. Heck, at this point, probably months. Soulless corporate slop is nothing new. It's always been shoveled out by AAA developers. It's always going to continue to be developed and shoveled out by AAA developers. Just the process in which that slop is made will change as the years go on. I hope we get the best interpretation, where they utilize generative AI or just AI overall as a tool in the toolbox, not meant to actually replace actual good ideas. But it feels like a pipe dream. When I hear, hey guys, we're going to utilize generative AI, to me, okay, so maybe the code is about to be bad. Maybe the game's going to be unoptimized as a direct result. Maybe the landscapes are going to feel soulless and just as if they exist with no intent or purpose. Maybe it's just all going to feel recycled.
Divine intervention!
I worry about Halo, man, I really do. And we got another report from Rebs here from a couple days ago, I guess like 8, that is talking about what we talked about a while ago, that seems as if they're going to do remakes for the whole Halo trilogy, at least, you know, Combat Evolved 2 and 3. And it really does feel as if Halo is in this fork in the road. The best case scenario is that, yeah, would a lot of us prefer them just probably work on Halo 7? Yeah, maybe. But could the Johnson missions in Campaign Evolved be bangers? They could be, and they could be really cool and a nice addition to CE. Could they do Halo 2 remake and Halo 3 remake and bring back a bunch of cut content and a bunch of ideas that just were never able to be realized in the final versions of Halo 2 and 3, but with modern day resources, bring them into life? Yeah, they could do that, and that could be really dang cool, man. Imagine Guardian Forest in Halo 3. You would have to rework the story a little bit to make it work, but just imagine how cool that would be. Maybe boss fight with the Gravemind in Halo 2. God, there's so much they could do here. And if they're able to actually realize that and make it into a reality and incorporate that alongside the remake stuff for the base games of Halo 2 and 3 and Combat Evolved, that could be awesome. And maybe they bring out Halo 7 and it's a feature-complete game that has campaign, multiplayer, forge mode, maybe even a theater mode at launch. I know this sounds delusional because of Halo in the modern day. I get it, but let a man dream. But like, maybe that's the timeline we get. I'm gonna call that the good timeline. And then the bad timeline is where they just overly use AI everywhere. It feels soulless, it feels recycled, it's just slot being shoveled out to cash in on this whole remake craze the industry is going through right now, because Resident Evil did it very well, and Halo 2 and 3 remakes come around and they're just excuses to sell those campaigns again, but also just an excuse to add sprint to them and aim down sights and all these mechanics. But it's okay because we'll have you be able to toggle them off if you find the skull, because that solves everything apparently. It's just, oh my god. You see what I mean by fork in the road? It's like the potential of these things is so high. They could knock it out of the park. I want an era where they're able to put out Halo games consistently and frequently again. Maybe not like every year or so, but not with these like wild gaps that we get ever since like Halo 5. And if they're able to leverage AI as a tool in the toolbox to aid in the development cycle, not replace it, that could be the best case scenario. Does anyone believe in your heart of hearts that that is going to be the timeline we actually live in? I'm pessimistic. I want to be wrong on this. I just really don't think that I'm going to be. And here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this whole situation. Do you think there's a world where they actually utilize AI to aid in the development cycle and be an additive force for these games moving forward? Do you just wish they didn't use it at all? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives and your reasons. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And guys, there's a ton of great games going on right now, because we got a Steam winter sale in the house, in the building tonight, and I smell count them, 5 great deals for RPGs available at the Steam winter sale. Want my roundup? Well, you should check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!